Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN AM for Monday, October 26th, 2020. And here are our top stories. What credit score do you need to get a student loan? And what groups of students benefit the most from getting that loan? Well, joining me now to talk about this and a lot more is Betsy Mayotte. She is the founder and president of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Betsy, welcome back to the program. Great to have you on this morning.
Nice to see you again.
Okay, Betsy, I want to kick things off because a lot of distinction is made here with credit scores and the importance of getting a general loan. But what does a credit score mean to getting a student loan? Is it important?
Well, it depends on what kind of student loan you're getting. Thankfully, the student loan that we tend to recommend the most, federal Stafford loan, there's no credit check. So as long as you don't currently have a defaulted federal student loan, you'll get approved and are otherwise eligible, you will get approved for a federal Stafford loan. Federal plus loans, whether it be a graduate plus loan or a parent plus loan, there is a credit check. However, it's different from the type of credit check that most people are used to. They don't look at your actual credit score, for one. They also don't look at your debt to income ratio. What they are looking for at a high level are active or recent significant delinquencies or other things like judgments or defaults or charge-offs, that kind of thing.
Thanks, Betsy. So if I'm a student and I've not had a full-time job, how do you measure the credit score? I mean, do you need to have a parent co-sign with you because you don't have any full-time employment? You don't have a measure by which a credit score could even be factored in.
Yeah, so that's where I was headed. So once you get beyond the federal student loans, private loans are a completely different ball of wax. Private student loans, they do what most of us would see as a more traditional credit check. However, some of the private lenders are also looking at what school you're going to and what you're studying as part of the approval process. In general, if you have a credit score of at least, say, 670, 680, you might be able to get a private student loan without a cosigner. But the vast majority of student borrowers that are applying for private student loans are going to need a cosigner.
Betsy, we've been through this pandemic. We have been talking with you throughout over the last course of months in terms of some of the reprieve that the federal government has given with student loans. But in general, what has been the impact on the student loan process?
Or even if you're going to be approved in the first place. Those of us that work with student loan advocacy usually really strongly recommend against private loans, period. For the very reasons that you just illustrated. If things go south financially, whether it be because of a pandemic or any other reason, private loans tend to have very few, if any, options for relief. So we tend to recommend that people stay within the federal loan program. Mm-hmm. What I tend to see is, especially with parents, is they want the loans to be in the student's name. So they'll shy away from the Parent Plus loans, but they'll agree to co-sign on a private student loan. What they don't understand often is that co-signing on a private student loan makes you equally liable for that as the borrower. So the effect to your own credit report is the same as if you'd taken out the Parent Plus loan. So which is another reason, and Parent Plus loans, as you know, have a lot more options for relief if something goes south financially. So that's why we tend to recommend people use the Parent Plus loans if it's affordable for them to do so versus co-signing on a private student loan.
Last question, Betsy, before we go to break. We've talked also throughout this show with you about stimulus, and there's been a lot of stimulus. What are you hearing in terms of stimulus and student loans that viewers should be aware of?
I think at this point, things are changing with additional stimulus packages like minute by minute, really, at this point. What I'm hearing at, this morning on a Wednesday morning is that, the talks have sort of stalled, but that could change by this afternoon. I mean, overall, I think it's going to really depend on the outcome of the election at this point. We're only 2 weeks away. You know, the outcome is really going to make the difference. But if things were to happen today, excuse me, the Senate doesn't really have any additional student loan relief in the proposals they've offered, whereas the House has some significant additional relief. So, and that's really how politics works. Usually, sometimes you end up somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But, you know, the other thing other than post-election is I think there's a lot of like, let's wait and see what the economy and the pandemic is doing, you know, after the holidays. So there's a couple different goalposts here that we're looking at.
Well, thanks, Betsy. I want to take a quick break. And when we come back, are there certain groups of students that may benefit from a student loan? You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. We're talking to Betsy Mayotte of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Betsy, thank you so much for staying with us this morning.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, thanks, Betsy. And look, we've talked a lot about student loans in the last segment and in previous episodes. Are there certain careers or certain individuals that are getting advanced degrees that may benefit more by taking a student loan?
Yeah, for sure. And there's just so many variables. I mean, you know, the people that tend to take out large amounts of student debt, you know, the first things we think about are, you know, maybe doctors and attorneys, but they also tend to have the income after the fact to be able to comfortably repay that debt. On the other side of the spectrum, we see people that have very small amounts of student debt, less than $10,000. A lot of times what we see there is the reason they have such low student debt is because they never completed their degree. So in those situations, we've got debt and no degree, and they tend to, those types of borrowers tend to be disadvantaged. However, other people that have low student debt, it's because they went for a 2-year associate's degree, which tends to be the least expensive. If you look at the studies, they tend to get the most benefit from that smaller amount of student debt that they took out. Now, with that said, I mean, all that's at a super high level.
Yeah.
There's other constituencies that take out the same amount of student debt as doctors and lawyers, and their income is not supportive of that amount of debt. I'm thinking of veterinarians, for example. Commercial pilots are someone else that someone doesn't think of, that they have to take on 2 or 3, even 300,000 in student loans to become a commercial pilot, and the average salary is 70 or 80 grand. I think from a high level, if you look at the last 10 or 15 years, looking at the increase in income versus the increase in student debt, I think the economic population that has suffered the most is the lower middle class and the middle class. For people with low incomes, we've seen minimum wage go up, and people in the lowest income brackets tend not to have to take out much student loans at all because they qualify for more grants and need-based scholarships. Whereas the middle class tends not to qualify for the so-called free money. The cost of tuition has continued to go up. Wages have not really gone up as much in the past 10 or 15 years. So their student debt has increased, but their income potential has not.
So Betsy, what I'm hearing here is that it really is important for the individual. And look, we don't know what we're going to be. Even when we get to college, we may take different careers, different courses. We may have different feelings of where we're going to be. But it really is important as you go through this process with advisors, with parents and mentors, to really figure out what the career is going to be and also what the commensurate compensation would be, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I always encourage people to go to a lower cost school, especially for the first 2 years. Some statistics that are really interesting is 2/3 of all students switch majors and or schools at some point. And sometimes you can lose credits by doing that, which is why it doesn't necessarily make sense to go to the high price school in the beginning. I think it was the New York Fed had a study last month. Only 27% of people with college degrees are actually utilizing that particular degree in their profession. I certainly didn't go to school saying I want to be a student loan compliance and advocacy person. I happen to be using my degree because it was business communications, but that isn't what I went to school for, so to speak. So those are all things to consider when you're making the college choice. You also want to look at, you generally don't want to take on more student debt than what the average starting salary is in your region for that profession. That's a good rule of thumb.
And Betsy, this is a real important conversation to start this early, because depending on how much you take out in student loans, depending on how much you earn from a career perspective, this could delay how much money you have for retirement and could delay your ultimate retirement as well. So this has a real impact on personal finance.
Absolutely. I run into people all the time that maybe they went so far as to get that degree at that high price school, and they start working in the field and they're like, you know what, I hate it. And now I have all this student debt and I don't, what am I going to do?
Well, thanks, Betsy. And I think the takeaway here is you really don't want to be left with everything up in the air. You really need to think about some guidance. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning. We look forward to having you back after the election, Betsy.
Thanks. Talk soon.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out our newsletter, The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited And do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.